in here. They have their surface-to-surface missile with a range of 400 kilometers and possibly J-11, maybe J-15 fighter planes. They have that in Subi also. Subi, Pyricross, and Mississippi, they're starting to militarize. They're already installed some anti-aircraft equipment there. China grabbed Scarborough Shoal in April 2012. And Scarborough Shoal is quite strategic. It's really very close to the Philippine mainland, and under Republic Act 9522, I was one of the authors there. Scarborough Shoal is part of Philippine territory. I already mentioned the strategic triangle. Because of the dispute that we have, we decided on January 22 to file a case in the arbitral tribunal under Annex 7 of the UNCLOS. This is in the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And on July 12, just a few months ago, the Republic of the Philippines was awarded a favorable decision by the Permanent Court of Arbitration. And that is supposed to be some kind of a game changer. Except that China refused to accept the ruling. And we are duty bound. I mentioned already that we are duty bound. The state is duty bound to protect our nation's maritime wealth, to defend what we have won in the Permanent Court of Arbitration. China won't accept the Hague Sovereignty Arbitration. They immediately issued a statement right after the award. And in fact, even before the award, they conducted a naval exercise near the area. Live fire drills just before this is July 9. And right after the award, what they did was they showed their resistance, their rejection, by sending a strategic bomber to bash our area in Scarborough Shoal. This is their top-of-the-line strategic bomber, nuclear capable. So they sort of up the ante. What are China's options after the arbitral tribunal? A lot of people are worried about the declaration of an ADIC, the Air Defense Identification Zone, similar to what they did in the East China Sea. And of course, this is going to be a very provocative act. Various countries urge China to respect the ruling of the arbitral tribunal. Of course, Vietnam, US, Australia, Japan, India, all of them issued statement, and one of the strongest statements came from the US. The US says its forces will keep operating in the South China Sea, and this has caused some high tension in the South China Sea. And they issued a statement that the US Navy is going to be there to stay in the South China Sea area. Now, what are their plans for Scarborough Shoal? Of course, the gut feel of a lot of people, including this representation, is that they plan to do basically the same thing that they did with the other artificial islands. This is Scarborough Shoal. Some people might think that it's just a dot in the vast ocean, but this is quite a big area. The area of this lagoon, which is navigable, destroyers can go inside the lagoon. There's a natural entrance there. The size of this lagoon is about the size of Quezon City. If you're familiar with Quezon City, it's quite big. Just imagine how many ships you can line up from the welcome sign in Quezon City all the way to Quezon Avenue, Commonwealth Avenue, Batasan, the Baliches. That is how big the Scarborough Shoal is. And this is what they say would be the master plan for Scarborough Shoal. They would like to construct some buildings, runway also, and then of course convert this into a better harbor for their bigger ships, even convert it into some kind of a tourism facility so that they can have absolute control of Scarborough Shoal. According to a former commander, Dennis Blair, Admiral Dennis Blair of the Pacific Command, US would go to war with China over Scarborough Shoal because of its strategic value. It can be a game changer. If it is converted into a naval military base, it could alter the balance of power in the South China Sea and in the Western Pacific. That's how important it is. What about the Philippine US Alliance? Is it in danger? Because of some signals that, of course, a lot of you are very familiar with as far as our president is concerned. A signal about the shift in US-Philippine military alliance, and the president dealing with China, with Russia, in the pipeline, to forge closer ties with China and Russia. This was announced by the Philippine president. He even announced that the Philippine-US War Games will be the last 2016, but of course this was later modified by both the Secretary of Foreign Affairs and the Secretary of Defense, because Yasay, our Secretary of Foreign Affairs, immediately made a clarification that Manila will respect our military pacts with Washington. However, after the president's trip to China, where he was able to get a lot of support in the amount of $24 billion worth of many projects, I'd like to go to the U.S. popularity for those Americans who are here. They conducted a survey of the United States all over the world, and very surprising that the U.S. got a 92% favorable rating in the Philippines, even higher than the rating given by the Americans to their own country, 92%. Korea got 84, Vietnam 77. Korea gave the U.S. an 84% popularity rating. Vietnam, in spite of the 10-year war, gave the U.S. 77%. And in India, it went up from 55 to 70%. This is according to the Pew Research. Also, the SWS conducted a survey among Filipinos on the trust rating of various countries. The US got plus 66%, Japan got plus 34%, Australia got plus 47%, the Scandinavian countries plus 16%, I think this is France at plus 14%, and China minus 33%. So you can see that the trust rating is very low. Now, the policy statements of the United States and China, they want to modify the Philippine-US defense ties to focus on terrorism and drugs instead of external defense. This is quite a major departure from what we've been noting for about 50 years of our mutual defense treaty through the joint exercises. And Secretary Yasay announced that the Philippines is temporarily setting aside the sea row with China. The objective is to develop a stronger relationship with China, and they look at the decision of the arbitral tribunal as a possible thorn, so it's being set aside temporarily. Now, what we are seeing in the area is the convergence of the most powerful military powers of the world. It's generating some kind of a new arms race. This is the Indo-Pacific area. I already mentioned this. What are the powers in the region? Practically all of the big powers are there. The US is of course there with their carrier battle groups and bombers. China, a rising power, considered number 3 military power in the world. They have this new aircraft carrier, the Liaoning, and a lot of submarines and destroyers and top-of-the-line fighter planes. Japan is a big military power also. They have this, they call this destroyer, but they look more like aircraft carriers. They're very easy to convert into fixed-wing aircraft carriers. They have world-class submarines, very powerful destroyers, and very sizable air force. Imagine 213 F-15s and they ordered 42 F-35s, state-of-the-art fighter planes that can be game changers. Vietnam is a sizable military power. They acquired very recently 6 Kilo class submarines from Russia, and they have a lot of planes also, most of them coming from Russia. Sukhoi 22, Sukhoi 27, and Sukhoi 30. Australia is there. They're buying $50 billion worth of submarines, Air Force. India has a very powerful presence in the area. They have aircraft carriers, they have 2. They have submarines, Kilo class, Akula class submarines, and they have a lot of fighter planes as well. And of course, they are very active in the Malabar exercise jointly with the US and with Japan. Pakistan is also there also. Pakistan is technically an ally of the United States, but also very closely identified with China, and they have a sizable military and also nuclear capable. Russia is there, the second most powerful military in the world. But of course, with the entry of President Trump, we don't know where Russia is going to be, especially considering that Russia is also supplying arms to Vietnam, which is a known adversary of China. So here is the disposition of forces in the Indo-Pacific area, a lot of power there. How China and US, how do they compare in terms of army, artillery, battle tanks, submarines, aircraft, and destroyers. Here's another lineup in terms of nuclear warheads. China's 240 against about 9,000. I think right now it's about 7,000 for the US. In terms of budget, well, this is not updated. Right now, the budget of China is about $130 billion against almost 700 for the US, and this is expected to go up with the entry of President Trump. In terms of submarines, aircraft carriers, etc., regional naval maritime power, you see China's 303, patrol vessels 205. And here's a better comparison. The maritime law enforcement, we're talking of Coast Guard capability here. Coast Guard and maritime surveillance. China has 205, Japan has 78, Vietnam has 55, Indonesia has 8, Malaysia has 2, and the Philippines has 4. So you see the overwhelming presence of China in the South China Sea in terms of Coast Guard and maritime surveillance ships. Of course, these are the naval combatants. 303 for China, 67 for Japan, 61 for Indonesia, Vietnam 37, Malaysia 23, and 14 for the Philippines. We have a mutual defense treaty. It's supposed to continue, the Balikatan exercise is supposed to continue, but modified to focus on terrorism and also civic action instead of focusing on external threat, which is how it had been in the past decades. We have EDCA, the expanded defense cooperation agreement. Duterte announces military economic break with the US, but that was later modified also. What about EDCA? You're familiar with EDCA. There are 5 bases identified as EDCA bases, and 4 of them are air bases. The only non-air base is Fort Magsaysay in Nueva Ecija. This is an army base. We have the Basa Air Base in Pampanga, Bautista Air Base in Palawan, Mactan Air Base in Cebu, and Lumbia Air Base in Cagayan de Oro. So you can see that what is appearing here, the concept of defense would be basically air-sea battle, air in particular. A lot of people are questioning why should EDCA, some people are saying EDCA should be terminated, but of course a lot of people are objecting to this also, especially within the military. Now, there's the Trump factor. I call it a game changer from President Obama to President Trump. And it is my feeling that because of this, the Philippines must start considering the recalibration and rebalancing of our foreign policy with the entry of the Trump administration. The Trump team is expected to be hardliner. I think you've all read about that.